Coming up on this episode of the Hockey Nuts, Steve and I get you caught up with all the news of the past week around the hockey world. The NHL playoffs are finished with the conference finals, with the Capitals and the Golden Knights having punched their tickets to the Stanley Cup Final. The Stanley Cup Final is now underway, and it's looking to be a great series. Steve and I will get you caught up with everything that has happened and preview the Stanley Cup Final itself. We'll have all the details of all this, plus the Minor League Hockey Minute, and our picks of the week coming up next. This is the Hockey Nuts Podcast, Season 2, Episode 39, recorded on Wednesday, May 30th, 2018. NHL Stanley Cup Final Preview.
Shut up and sit down.
Delayed penalty coming up. Slashing call on Carlson. Pretty healthy whack at that. Caps bench not happy about it. And in 30 seconds, no one will care, as they'll be bringing out the Wales Conference Trophy. And we'll see if they touch it, like Vegas did.
Getting down to the final few seconds. Ovechkin is out there on the ice. It's still a delayed penalty. And 7.3 seconds remaining. But Ovechkin steps up, and he steps up large. And for the first time in his career, he will head to the Stanley Cup Final. The Washington Capitals are Eastern Conference champions.
Burakovsky with half a minute. Oshie skates the puck to center, into the attacking zone. Back to the blue line. Backstrom from Ovechkin. Just got the puck back to Nick Backstrom. Into the corner. Backstrom waits. Gets the puck back. He's got Ovechkin. He tried to pass it, and that's blocked by Thomas Nosek. Back out to center. Nosek's after the puck. He's got time with an empty net. That'll do it. And they're on the ice for the final puck drop. The Vegas Golden Knights have done it again. They open this series with a 6-4 victory.
Hello and welcome to episode 39 of the Hockey Nuts Podcast. My name is Wayne. I'm here once again with Steve. How's it going today, Steve?
Going great, Wayne. Good to talk to you tonight, and looking forward to a great podcast.
We have a fun one tonight. There actually hasn't been a whole lot going on since the last time we did one. We did one a week ago on the 23rd. Here we are on the 30th, doing one a few hours before Game 2 of the Stanley Cup Final. And since we last recorded, there's only been 2 games on the ice in the NHL.
That's right.
That's Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final between Tampa Bay and Washington. And then, of course, Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final was Monday night. And here we are just a couple of hours before the playing of Game 2. And I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited after watching Game 1.
I'm very excited. That was a great game. Very entertaining. Lead changes, differences in strategy, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of lucky bounces for both teams. And I was stunned at the amount of people watching on the Jumbotron outside the T-Mobile Arena. I got to tell you, that was the most I've ever seen.
Yeah, the bandwagoners were definitely out in force there in Vegas.
There were thousands and thousands. I'd love to know how many people were out there, but there was a large number of people outside T-Mobile Arena at that game.
Yeah, I don't know if they had an official count, but it looked like to me there was almost as many people outside as there was inside.
Easily.
Yeah.
Easily. I wouldn't be surprised if there were more people outside than inside.
So, yeah, Vegas, Stanley Cup fever is definitely taking root in Vegas for sure.
Yeah.
And not only the regular fans are out, but the celebrities are coming out now, of course. They always do every year. And, we've got all that to talk about. The Hockey Nuts podcast can be found on major podcast search engines like Apple Podcasts and Google Play Music. Just search for the term The Hockey Nuts in whatever app you use to get podcasts. We can also be found at thehockeywriters.com on their podcast page. TheHockeyWriters.com is a great place to get more stories and content about our favorite sport. We love listener involvement, and there are a few ways you can get involved with the show. You can email the show at feedback@thehockeynuts.com, or you can leave us a voicemail in our mailbox at 919-960-1718. You can also tweet us. I'm at WayneHalley9. Steve is at SBall504man. Also, be sure to visit our website at thehockeynuts.com. There you can see all of our past episodes archived, and you can listen to the show through your web browser on that site. As always, links and stories that we mention in the show are available in the show notes for this episode. In addition to our website, you can also watch us record the show each week live on YouTube. We generally record on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday nights, depending on our work schedules. You can find our YouTube channel at thehockeynuts.com/YouTube. The show is a hobby and a labor of love for us, but the production of it is not free. To help us offset the cost of producing the show, we've set up various affiliate links on our webpage at thehockeynuts.com. The affiliate links allow you to help financially support our podcast without costing you any more money out of pocket. Some of the affiliate relationships we have are with Amazon, hockeymonkey.com, Ting.com. If you use any of these services, we'd greatly appreciate it if you use our affiliate links to those sites. Simply go to thehockeynuts.com and click on the appropriate advertising banner on the right. Your purchase will not cost you anything extra, and a small portion of your purchase will come back to help support the show. And we thank you very much. Now, back to the show. But first, before we do that, we've got to talk about Game 7 of the Eastern Conference Final. And that was, of course, Washington versus Tampa Bay. And I don't know about you, but I was a little surprised at the outcome in that one. I kind of expected Tampa Bay to win that one.
Yes, I was surprised. Well, I don't know. I thought that I really thought that if Washington played the way they played Game 6, they were going to win it. In my opinion, Tampa Bay is not one of those teams. They don't run hot and cold on momentum swings. They're more of a team that keeps to me, my opinion, steady, even pace and even keel through the game. And they seem to capitalize on mistakes sometimes.
Absolutely.
But they're more of a team of staying within themselves during the game and just wearing down their opponent and beating them, versus a team like Pittsburgh, who is able to take momentum swings and really use them to their advantage. And that being said, I think that Washington had Tampa Bay's number. They beat them the first two games. Tampa Bay came back and won the next three, but that shutout in Washington really
that Game 6 shutout. Yeah, that 3-0 shutout. Yep. Really did
befuddle Tampa Bay. I mean, they couldn't have done it at a better time. Here they are. They've won 3 in a row, and they're thinking, "Wow, we're gonna waltz right into the Stanley Cup final. We're playing better than them. We're gonna win." And Braden Holtby just shut them down.
Yep.
And in Game 7, it was the same thing. They had no answer for him. The power play couldn't score. As I said, in my opinion, Tampa Bay is a team that they can wear you down, but they use their weapons very effectively to take control of the game. And they just couldn't do that against Washington in Game 6 or Game 7. at any time. Washington had control of both of those games going away.
Yep. Yeah, and I think Washington, they played about as the best defensive game that you could possibly play against an explosive team like Tampa Bay. It's almost like after Game 5, Washington just decided, okay, that's it. It's time to man up and everybody did their job. Everybody played, even the offensive guys.
Yeah.
Backstrom and Ovechkin and Kuznetsov and all these guys all did very, very well defensively and really shut down, because there's no way Holtby was doing 2 shutouts in a row against Tampa Bay Lightning all by himself.
Right.
But the Washington defense did a great job at eliminating second chance opportunities for the Capitals. And they did a great job at just, I was watching the game, and one thing that was what was clear to me is the way Washington was covering defensively is anytime the puck came anywhere near the net, you saw almost it was like you were watching a balloon having the air let out of it. All 5 players just collapsing right on the net, and all of them were all within a stick length of the net. When you clog up the slot that much, it makes it almost impossible to get a puck through to the net. Never mind beating the goalie.
Right.
And that's just the way Washington played it. The last 2 games, they just completely outplayed the Tampa Bay Lightning in front of their own net, and then they just capitalized on all the very few mistakes that Tampa Bay made. It ended up in the back of their net. Washington ended up scoring. So, there we go. Last 2 games, you have a 3-0 shutout win and a 4-0 shutout win for Washington.
Right.
And it was almost as if after Game 6 that Washington finally was able to believe in themselves, that they could win against Tampa Bay.
Wayne, that touches on that's a super point. That's very important, because previously, especially during the Sidney Crosby era, in my opinion, Washington fell victim to that momentum surge. I know when we beat Washington several times. And the momentum swings that took place in the games that mattered, especially in against Pittsburgh, really just trounced them. Washington couldn't come back from Pittsburgh. They'd score on a power play goal, and a minute later they'd score another goal. And all of a sudden, Washington, here's 2 goals scored against them. What are we going to do? It was like a team that would fall apart. And a lot of teams do against that kind of just onslaught. I don't know another way to say it. Pittsburgh that's Pittsburgh's bread and butter.
Yep.
When they get going, you better stop the bleeding. You better stem the tide, stop what they're doing, shut them down. Whatever you got to do, even if it's take a penalty and put them in the power play, something to stop them from scoring, because that Pittsburgh can do it in bunches. I've seen him score 2, 3 goals very, very quickly.
Yep. And
Washington never had an answer for that until this year. And it just seemed that, I don't know whether you'd say it's destiny. Alexander Ovechkin, I mean, he's going to win the Conn Smythe if they win. I really believe he will.
Yeah, if Washington ends up winning the Cup, I think he's definitely your Conn Smythe Trophy winner for sure.
Yep, he's had a tremendous playoff series, and he has elevated his game. He's elevated his mind, his mindset. I just think that Washington wasn't going to be denied in Game 7 against Tampa Bay. They just weren't. They had the feeling, and I think Game 6 really did a lot to pull them through that. As I said, I've watched them fall apart like a deck of cards, stacked up deck of cards before.
Yep.
And they just didn't do it this time. They had the power. Now, against Vegas, I don't know. Vegas was very, very effective Monday night, especially. I wouldn't say that Fleury played exceptionally well, but their ability to match up against Washington, their 4 lines, they match up very well. It's kind of like they know Washington's Achilles heel, and their home crowd. It certainly doesn't hurt the fact that they have. I even heard Pierre Maguire say it. They have a louder home crowd than Winnipeg or Nashville. That's what he said.
Yep.
So that may be the real reason right there. But
yeah, and with that, let's go ahead and take a look at Game 1 there in the Stanley Cup Final. Of course, we move on, Before we do that, though, was it just me, or did they have too many days off between the end of the conference final and the start of the Stanley Cup final? They have 4 full days off between. What a man! It just seemed like we were waiting forever for Game 1.
I agree. No, I agree, 100%. They had Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday off.
Yep.
I really thought they were going to start that Stanley Cup. I doubted it was going to be. I really thought they were going to start it Sunday night.
Yeah.
I really didn't understand why they didn't.
Or even with the Game 7 being on a Wednesday, they could have easily done Saturday night. Saturday night is a night that NHL pretty much, quarter of the games during the season are on Saturday night, it seems.
Right.
Like almost every Saturday night, every team plays in the league almost every week. So I thought for sure they'd do Saturday night Game 1 but I don't know. When you get to the Stanley Cup final, though, I think you end up having TV networks have more a say on the games than the individual teams do, because they announced that Game 1 was going to be Monday, well before the series were done. So it just sucked waiting. But anyway, about Game 1,
I agree.
What an incredible game. The lead changes it was back and forth. Both teams had 1-goal leads at 2 different periods during the game. So Vegas had a 1-0 lead, a 3-2 lead, and then a 5-4 lead.
Yep.
Washington had a 2-1 lead and a 4-3 lead. And that 4-3 lead was in a third. So both teams had a lead in a third in this game. Both teams had multiple leads in this game. It was almost like it was one of those games where last goal wins.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that 5th goal that Vegas scored, it just, I don't know.
I think that one took the wind out of Washington's sails. It almost seemed like, what do we got to do to score against this team or to keep a lead against this team?
Right.
Because
it just seemed, that ended it. When they scored that goal, with every try that Washington put together and mustered to try and come back, they just couldn't do it. It just seemed like that was it, and Vegas clamped down,
Yeah. And it was just one of those where the energy of the home crowd was incredible all night long. And obviously Vegas fed on that, and it probably helped to wear down the Capitals. But yeah, basically what had happened is in the first period, Vegas jumps out to a 1-goal lead, although it took 7 minutes to get that first goal. And Vegas is known for scoring in the first couple minutes of every game that they played, or almost every game that they played, particularly the home ones. And it took them almost 7 minutes to get that first goal, but they did ultimately get the first goal. A shot from the point from Colin Miller that Braden Holtby basically didn't see until it was by him. And that's former Bruin Colin Miller, for all you Bruins fans out there. So he got the first goal of the game. And then Washington tied it up about 7 minutes later at the 14:41 mark. And then Washington, about a little less than 2 minutes after that, got the 2-1 lead, goal from Nick Backstrom. And then, of course, right before the end of the first period, William Karlsson got the tying goal with less than 2 minutes to go in the third period. So they come out of the first with a 2-2 tie.
Right.
And at that point, I'm thinking, this whole series, I'm throwing my hands up. I don't know who's going to win.
Right.
If anybody thinks that they know who's going to win this series, they're crazy at this point. So into the second period we go. Riley Smith scores 3:21 into the period to give Vegas the 3-2 lead. And then about 5 minutes later, John Carlson of the Capitals ties it up. And that's essentially how the second period ended. And then in the third, Wilson comes out, minute 10 into the third, to give Washington the 4-3 lead. That kind of quieted the crowd down a little bit. That's when when you started seeing the crowd having a little bit of nervous energy, that they weren't sure that their team was going to win. And then about a minute and 30 seconds after Wilson gave Washington the 4-3 lead, Vegas comes right back.
Ryan Reeves
gets the goal. Fourth liner for Vegas.
Yep.
And he ties the game, and that brought the crowd right back into the game. And then about 7 minutes later, at the 9:44 mark, that's when Vegas got the 5-4 go-ahead goal and from Thomas Nosek, and they never looked back after that. And Nosek also got the empty netter with about 2 seconds left in the game. Yep. So it, for all intents and purposes, it was a 5-4 game, even though the final was 6-4.
Yep.
That empty netter was basically a puck that kind of squirted out of the zone and kind of floated down in, and Nochek won the race and just deposited it into the open net. But there was no way Washington was going to come back. And they almost tied it. Who was it? Brett Connolly had a shot at practically a wide open net there in the last minute. Do you remember that? Where
that's right.
I can't remember who passed it off to him. Pass came across the crease, and Connolly was wide open, or he was standing basically with a wide open net, and all he had to do is hit it. But if you looked at the replay at the last second,
a stick.
A defenseman, and I can't remember which defenseman it was, but Vegas defenseman chopped down and hit his stick just as the puck was getting there, and that was just enough to make him miss that. Otherwise, that game was tied, and we were headed to overtime.
Oh, yeah.
So, my mind, that game could have gone either way. Vegas was very fortunate to come out of that game with a win.
Yes, they were.
Washington was the tough luck loser in this one, but they showed that they are very capable of beating Vegas. And if Washington comes out tonight and earns the split with Vegas,
they did what they had to do.
Then basically, if you're a Washington fan out there, all you're hoping to get out of these first two games is a split. There's no way you're going to beat Vegas twice in their building. Not the way they're playing in that building this year. So hopefully Washington can come out, because I want to see this series go all the way. I don't want to see this thing end quick. So I'm rooting for Washington tonight in this one. I want to see Washington tie this series to extend it so we can lengthen, because this one's going to be fun. I mean, the stories are unbelievable. You've got Vegas being the expansion team, first year in the league. No team in any professional sport, never mind just hockey, has ever won a championship being in their inaugural season. On the other side, you've got Ovechkin, who's been trying for how many years to get his Stanley Cup. This is the first time he's actually made it to the final, never mind win it. So whoever wins this series, it's just going to be a great story either way.
Right.
Neither team has won a Stanley Cup in their past, so this will be, what do we count, 19 Stanley Cup champions? 19 different teams out of the 30 have won a Stanley Cup. So we'll be up to 20 after this year.
Right. That's an interesting fact, Wayne.
Yeah.
I did not. Yeah, very good. I can tell you this. From the standpoint of home ice, I think Vegas stands to a very powerful advantage. Washington cannot afford to lose a game at home.
Nope.
They really can't.
Nope.
If they lose a game at home, I think Vegas is going to take this series. It's that simple.
Yep.
When Washington goes back to the Capital One Arena, they got to win both games.
Absolutely.
They really can't, and the Vegas' strategy will be, hey, we just take one from them. And if they do, I think they go back to Vegas and they're going to win. But I think if Washington gets their heads together, plays like they did in Game 7 against Tampa Bay, not only do I see them beating Vegas, I see them beating Vegas soundly. They can do it. It may be the only chance they get. They better take advantage of one. They got a good chance to beat them in that first game.
Yep.
But, stranger things have happened, and, it's always hard to win on home ice. It's very difficult on Washington. But if they get those chances again in Game 2, they've got to clamp down, take advantage of the opportunity, and win a game in Vegas and put this thing in their favor. Like I said, I think they stand a tougher job winning all their games on their home ice than Vegas does winning the games on their home ice. Vegas is a better home team. So they got their work cut out for them. If Washington can pull off the victory tonight, this is going to be a great series.
Yep, absolutely. And I think one of the problems with Washington is the fact that how fast Vegas plays. And that seems to be the big takeaway, that every team that has played Vegas so far this playoffs, they're overwhelmed at how fast the Vegas team is. They built a team based around speed. They knew they didn't have the top end talent because they weren't able to get that from the expansion draft. So they went out and picked top to bottom. The whole roster is their team speed, and that's how they're beating teams. So defensively, Washington has to figure out how to slow down Vegas. Offensively, they've got to figure out how to beat Vegas's tight defensive game, because they play a very similar game to the way Washington played against Tampa, is that when the puck gets close to the Vegas net, they all collapse. Both teams do this.
Yep.
All 5 players collapse. You as a youth hockey player, I was taught if you're a winger, you cover your point men. But you don't see that with these two teams. Yeah, the wingers are still covering their point men, but because of the team speed that they have, those wingers also collapse down low. When the puck is down low, they're collapsing down low, and all 5 players are right in the middle of the slot trying to get that puck out of there. So yeah, you're going to see a lot of, I think this series is going to be decided by a few things. Special teams, odd man rushes, that's going to be huge in this game.
Right.
Turnovers, which create odd man rushes usually. And just overall, just puck luck, really. The bounces that happen in front of the net with a big crowd of people right in front of that net. You're going to see goals go in, just banking off different bodies from both sides. You're going to see, the odd man rush goal. But just the general catching guys out of position just doesn't happen because both these teams play so well defensively. You're just not going to see it. So it should be a fun series. I mean, both teams play with a lot of speed, a lot of heart, and we didn't expect it in game 1, but we saw it of a lot of physicality. You had that questionable Tom Wilson hit, which we haven't talked about yet, on Marchessault, which ultimately didn't get suspended. They kind of looked at it and, determined, Washington fans want a suspension from that hit, but there was no head contact there. So the league kind of used that to say, well, yeah, he got penalized for it. But that's all he's going to get. No suspension with that because there was no contact to the head. It was just a blindside hit. Used to happen in the game all the time, not so much anymore. But they decided the penalty on the ice was enough for that one. And of course, the NHL takes these games in the Stanley Cup Final at a much higher. Being suspended for a game in the Stanley Cup Final is far different than being suspended for a regular season game. So it's a much more severe penalty, even though it's one game either way. The stake of the game tells you that you better deserve it before you suspend somebody for a Stanley Cup Final game. And ultimately, the league determined that the hit was not bad enough to get a suspension, as ugly as it looked on the ice. And it looks like Marchessault will continue playing. He passed the concussion protocol, I guess. I'm assuming that's what he went through when he left the ice in that game. But he ultimately came back to the game and ultimately finished the game. So
yep,
that probably was a factor in him not getting suspended too. If Marchessault would have left the game and not returned, there's probably a good chance Tom Wilson's not playing game 2.
Right.
So
good point.
So there's that. So I don't know. It's going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait for game 2. It's going to be
this is going to be a lot of fun. No question about it.
So with that, that's pretty much all I had on game 1. I guess we can go ahead and look forward to some of these stories that went on around the league.
Yeah, quite a few of them, actually.
Some not concerning the two teams that are on the ice. And let's start with transactions. Elias Pettersson signed a 3-year entry-level contract with the Vancouver Canucks on Friday. The 19-year-old forward was selected by the Canucks with the number 5 pick in the 2017 NHL Draft. Pettersson was named the regular season and playoff MVP after helping Växjö win the Swedish Hockey League championship. He led the SHL with 56 points and a plus 27 rating in 44 regular season games, and set a record in the league for most points by an under 20 player. The previous mark was 53 points by Kent Nilsson way back in 75-76. Pettersson then led the SHL in playoffs in goals and points with 19. So looks like the Canucks have got themselves a pretty good little player there. Of course, he was drafted 5th overall, so you would expect that that the Canucks would have gotten a pretty decent player at that point in the draft. But he essentially, as an underager, dominated the Swedish league. And that's a league basically of the best Swedish hockey players not playing in the NHL. And then a few under 20 players that are have yet to sign with their NHL team. So yeah, Vancouver is quietly assembling themselves a pretty good team out there.
Yes, they
It'll
are.
probably be a season or two before they start to win on a meaningful level. But you've got, Pettersson, who's now going, I would assume he's going to make the team in the fall. You've got Brock Besser. You've got Bo Horvat. I mean, those three there make one hell of a first line if they end up using them all in the same line. Although Pettersson, I think, is a center, I believe. He may be their second line center. But anyway, you've got Berchi. You've got, there's a number of young players there that are up and comers. Of course, you got the Sedins that are retiring. So they won't be around anymore. But But that young team that they've got going on there, they still need a few more pieces before they're going to be competitive. But I think the Canucks are going to be a better team than they were last year for sure.
I agree.
All right, so let's talk about Evander Kane. We did mention in the last podcast that he was being rumored to have signed a contract extension with the Sharks, and since we last podcast, that in fact did happen. Of course, if we talked for quite a while about his situation on last week's podcast, so I don't want to get too much into it this week, just in the fact that that contract is in fact finalized, and he signed a 7-year contract, and on my show notes, I don't have written down how much it was for. I'm going to look it up real quick here at Cap Friendly. There it is. 7 years, $7 million a year.
Yeah.
So $49 million.
What do you think about that, Wayne? Off the top, that's a lot of money.
I hope he's the best player on the Sharks, because he's the highest. Well, he's not quite the highest paid one. Brent Burns and Mark-Edward Vlasic are both getting paid more than that. But yeah. He's certainly the highest paid forward on the Sharks,
right?
Unless the Sharks come out and re-sign Thornton for more than that, which I highly doubt at his age.
Here's what I think, Wayne. Here's what I think. Okay, Evander Kane, he fizzled right out in Winnipeg, and they kicked him out the door. Basically, they really did. I can remember Dustin Byfuglien saying, without even worrying about it, that Evander Kane had problems, right during a game one night. So, but when he went to Buffalo, he was in a position to right the ship.
Yep.
Okay. And for whatever reason, he didn't do that. And they got rid of him. He wasn't going to stay in Buffalo. They got rid of him. So now here he is, and you know, his talent really hasn't suffered. Would you say? I think he's still a very, very talented player. He's still scoring goals. He still skates very well. I think he has the mental mindset to overcome that, but he's a big risk. He's a risk.
Yep.
To pay a risk, $49 million. That's a pretty gutsy move. And they must see.
Yeah, it is. It is a high-risk move, but the rewards could pay off. I mean, the fact that they've got him signed to that long of a contract, if he plays as well in the next 7 seasons as he did during the playoffs this year, that trade that San Jose did to get him was going to turn out to be a steal. But it is a risk. But I think a lot of the stuff that went on prior in Buffalo and in Winnipeg, a lot of that was, in my mind, it's immaturity, really.
Right.
Because a lot of it was off the ice. A lot of it was just off-ice drama that kind of affected him on the ice in some ways. But he seems to have gotten over that real quickly by now ending up in San Jose. He now knows that he's on a team that can make the playoffs every year. And they probably sat him down right in the beginning and said, look, this is big boy hockey now, and you're going to, if you want to stay with us, we're going to need you to be a leader for this team, both on and off the ice.
I agree. And they just gave him $49 million, believing that how he conducted himself, at least for the first month or so, I don't know, he's been traded a month, 2 months. They must see that he's doing what they said they needed him to do. And that's what I'm saying is my take on it is this, is San Jose seeing Joe Thornton go out the door. They're looking at their core. I think San Jose hiccuped and they just said, we got to have this guy because he's very talented, and we'll just put everything that happened in the past as being in the past. And we'll give this guy a real good contract because we believe he's going to come, like gangbusters and do great for our team. Switch things. If he'd gone to the New York Rangers, I doubt very seriously they'd have paid him $7 million a year. If he went to the Boston Bruins, would they have paid him that much money?
No, they wouldn't have been able to fit that much money onto the cap.
Say that they could.
Yeah,
$50 million. That's a lot of money.
You're paying him more. You would be paying Kane more than Bergeron. You'd be paying him more than the same as Krejci, although I think Krejci's a little bit overpaid at this point in his career. Bergeron, Marchand are all lower. They're all lower than him. $7 million is a lot of money. I mean, you're paying. You're expecting for $7 million. You're expecting a guy who's in that core 5 or 6 players that we keep talking about. That's going to make up the core of a team. So every team has this core of 5 or 6 players that are going to do 80% of the work, so to speak, in a team's success. And the teams that are, the pattern around the league is you pay 4 or 5 guys really well to be your core, to carry the bulk of the work for your team. And then all the other players that come in, in the $3 million or less salary range are all your roster fillers, the role players, the guys that
right.
You still need good guys in those roles, but are more interchangeable. You can replace the $1-2 million guy with another, but your core of the team, those are the guys that you're paying the bulk of the money to. Well, they just determined Evander Kane's one of them. And in fact, there's no players outside of Vlasic, Burns, and Kane that are signed beyond next season, the 1920 season.
Right.
That whole team is going to turn over.
Yeah, I agree. Here's the way I'd look at it. What I would think that would be a shrewd move to do is to sign him to a contract for 3 years and pay him $6 million a year and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to pay you for 3 years. We're going to pay you $6 million a year. If you perform the way we want you to, and we have a good feeling that you might based on your playoff performance, then you're going to get a huge reward. Mm-hmm. If you don't and you start screwing up and there's problems, you know what to expect. And that way they're not on the hook for $50 million.
Yep.
I would have paid him less than $20 million. I would have signed him to a 2 or a 3 year deal and said, this is what we're going to do. And you can count on being a starter during this time. And we're going to pay you fairly based on the rest of our team. And yes, we do have a lot of turnover going on right now, but we're just wanting to see how you take the ball and run with it.
But at the same time, Evander Kane's and his agent probably went to San Jose and said, look, if you want me to stay, it's got to be a long-term deal. Otherwise, I'm walking. And San Jose, without having that much talent, they really don't have that much talent coming up for them. Because they've been so good, they haven't had any high-end draft picks in a while. Probably just decided to seize the opportunity to keep him, and they probably paid him like they would have paid an unrestricted free agent. Because Kane probably would have gotten $49 million from some team out there if San Jose chose not to. So San Jose was in a hard spot there where, they had him. They had first dibs on signing him, but they ended up having to go with something similar to what they would have paid in free agency to get him. Because everybody knows that if Kane didn't sign with San Jose, he would have gotten that 7-year, $49 million contract from somebody. There's teams out there that would have gone ahead and paid that. So San Jose probably felt they had no choice because, you're faced with a team that's aging. Their better players are getting up there in age. You've got, Logan Couture is already almost 30. Pavelski's 33. Joe Thornton is almost 40 now. He's 38. And even though he's a free agent this summer, everyone's expecting him to stay in Vegas. Going forward, this is an aging team, and the players they've got coming up are not slam dunk bona fide replacements for the star players they have now. Brent Burns, he's well in his 30s. Vlasic, 31. Paul Martin, 37. I mean, this is an aging team. So I think this Evander Kane signing, Evander Kane's only 26. This is San Jose saying, okay, he's our first major piece under the new San Jose Sharks. They've got to begin retooling this team pretty soon because I think the window is closing. I personally think the window's already closed for the Sharks. I think last year or the year before was the last of their legitimate Stanley Cup contention run. I wasn't expecting them to do anything this year, and it really didn't do much either. I think Kane is basically the first major piece of the new San Jose Sharks, the post-Burns, Joe Thornton, Joe Pavelski era San Jose Sharks. So I think that's what that signing was all about.
Fair enough.
All right, let's move on to the next signing or transaction story. It's really just an update to the draft. The Rangers are going to have the number 9, the 26th, and 28th pick in the 2018 NHL draft. 28th pick was set when the Tampa Bay Lightning lost to the Washington Capitals in the Eastern Conference Final last Wednesday. The Rangers acquired the pick from the Lightning as part of the trade that sent defenseman Ryan McDonagh and forward JT Miller to Tampa Bay on February 26th. And, of course, the New York Rangers also acquired the 26th pick from the Boston Bruins as part of the Rick Nash trade on February 25th. So I don't know how you feel about having 3 picks in the first round, but it's 3 more than the Bruins have.
Oh yeah, and the Rangers a lot of times were very adept at trading away their picks when they brought in big name players during the summer and during the trade deadline. They did that for years, so they're finally going to keep some picks here, and we'll see how they do. But I'm hopeful that pick will land them someone that they can put to use right away.
Yeah. Any speculation as to who they'll get at number 9? I haven't really looked into it yet.
I'm not sure. I think the fellow from Michigan, Quinn Miller? I think they'd love to get him. I think they would love to grab hold of him. But he may be gone already. Is it Quinn Miller? I wish I had my edition in front of me. I don't.
Yeah, I got mine in front of me. I've got my edition of the Hockey News, the draft preview in front of us.
I actually just pulled mine out, Wayne. I have it right now.
Quinn Hughes, American.
Quinn Hughes. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good player. Defenseman.
That's a guy that they want. Okay. And I know Oliver Wahlstrom's there, but I think they have their eyes set on Quinn Hughes, but I don't think he's going to make it to 9.
Yeah, now Hockey News has him rated at 6 overall.
Oh, yeah?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I see that. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that, you look at the Rangers and they go for American players a lot, frequently. And I think that kind of a player fits their mold very well. And that's the guy I would think that they're going to take the best selection that they can take at that time. But the Rangers need offense. I think as far as the goaltending position goes, I think they're looking to grow whoever the replacement is for Henrik from within.
Yeah, they got to start. They got to start developing a guy, but there's no goalies in basically the best goalie in this year's draft. And as terms of who the Hockey News is picking is at number 46, Alain McShane. Sorry, I'm sorry. Jakub Skarik, goalie out of the Czech Republic. And then right behind him, that's at 49, Justus Annunen. God, I'm butchering these names today. Goaltender from Finland. Those are the best goalies I see in the so you're looking at 49 or 50 before any goaltenders are even mentioned in the top 100 prospects of the Hockey News.
Right.
So don't expect any goalies go in the first round.
No, I don't think so, and I wasn't really aware of that. But only from the standpoint that you don't hear them talking about it a lot.
Yeah.
So that's what I think, Wayne. I think that's the guy that they would like to draft and then build it from there. Once you get to 26 to 28, I don't know what, there's no way. Really, 9 is tough to pick who you're going to take.
Yeah, 9 you're picking the best player available in the draft. Yeah. That's generally what they do. And then when you get down to 26, 28, or especially outside the first round, then you're starting to plug in holes that you have in your lineup. You're picking guys that you think can fill a hole that you have 3 years from now.
Right.
Most guys outside the top 15, most NHL teams are not expecting players to play year one once you get outside that top 10 or 15 players. So, they're looking at long-term needs and they're plugging in holes once you get down in there. So to try to speculate who they're going to pick at 26, 28, I don't even think the Rangers know who they're going to pick at 26 and 28. Never mind you and I being able to guess it. I'm sure they have a fairly decent idea who they can get at number 9, probably narrow it down to 2 or 3 players. And then, hoping that they get, one of those 3.
But with 3 first-round picks, I could see a deal happening where the Rangers would trade their first-round pick to a team in the hopes that they could move up with one of those picks.
Yeah, they could package 26, 28, and then move up to like 15.
Right.
For the 26, 28, something like that.
Or if Quinn Hughes is the guy they want, they could make a sweet deal and grab him because they don't think he's going to make it to 9. I don't know, but with 3 first-round picks, you have some luxury to be able to do something, especially if you have your eyes set on somebody that you really want.
Yeah. And that's what the Bruins attempted to do in 2015 when they had those 3 picks in a row. It was 13, 14, 15, I think it was. I don't have it right in front of me. I think the Bruins were trying to package those picks together in an attempt to move up and try to get into the top 5. But ultimately it failed, and they ended up having to make picks at those picks. And so far, only one of those players, Jake DeBrusk, has worked out, but the other two are still working their way up from the minor leagues. So, so there is that possibility. But I don't think we're going to see anything happen with any of that stuff during the Stanley Cup Final. You and I talked briefly earlier this week in person, and I told you about my belief that I think the NHL tries to squash any off-ice drama during the Stanley Cup Final because they want all the attention to be on the Stanley Cup Final and not on anything going on. So you're going to see any big trades that happen, something like this where they could package 3 picks and move up in the draft. I don't think you're going to see any of that stuff come out until after the Stanley Cup Final is over, just because the NHL doesn't want that distraction. That's just my theory. Other people have that same theory, but I think it's going to be, for the next 2 weeks anyway, all focus is going to be just on the Stanley Cup Final and none of this off-ice stuff. But we'll see what happens on that.
Right.
All right. That's the only transactions of note that I saw this week. There were a bunch of other little signings here and there, of kind of lower level players, but I didn't see any worth mentioning anyway in this podcast. And I also didn't see any injuries or suspensions or fines. I thought we were going to get a suspension with that Tom Wilson hit, but apparently NHL decided not to fine or suspend him. So that puts us moving into the category of other interesting stories going on. And the first one I want to talk about is Gary Bettman, as he does every year, had a press conference in the hours leading up to Game 1. He almost does I don't think it's an official State of the League, but he usually makes himself available to the press before Game 1 in the Stanley Cup Final every year and allows them to ask a bunch of questions. So the first thing that was talked about, or one of the main things that were talked about, was the expansion Seattle team, or their application. They haven't been granted a team yet. And in fact, that was part of the press conference. He announced that the expansion, the vote going to the NHL Board of Governors will not go to the NHL Board of Governors until the fall, according to Gary Bettman. So we won't see an announcement, supposedly, on whether or not Seattle is granted a franchise until later this fall, which is fine because the application that went in initially put the team starting play in the 2020-21 season. So that's we'll play 2 full seasons, 2 more seasons with 31 teams before Seattle gets added for that season. So for those of you who are hoping for a 2019-2020 start for the Seattle franchise, it's not going to happen because it's going to be the following year. And that's due mostly to the fact that the Key Arena still needs to undergo renovations. And from what this article says, really the renovations haven't even started yet officially. So we're still at least 2 full seasons away from Seattle having any players on their roster. But he also did say that they are still planning, even though Vegas is doing as well as they are still planning on giving Seattle the same rules that Vegas had for the expansion draft. In fact, Vegas gets even one better on the rest of the teams in the NHL. They've also announced that, and this was announced prior, this is just kind of a reminder, that Vegas will actually be exempt from the expansion draft when Seattle goes ahead and pick. So Seattle won't be able to take anybody from Vegas.
That is just... I would have really thought they would have redone this and said,
we made Vegas too good. We need to,
12 players are exempt. 12 players can be protected rather than, they would have upped that. But whatever. That's really...
Yeah. Although Vegas is going to have a hard time keeping this team together. They've got 6 players who are unrestricted free agents this summer, and 7 more who will be unrestricted free agents after this next season. So Vegas is after this upcoming season, Vegas only has 10 players under contract for the 2019-2020 season.
Yep.
So yeah. And the fact that all these players had great seasons, there's no way they're going to be able to keep this team together as it is. So it'll be time to break up the Vegas Golden Knights. This will be a Stanley Cup run that will probably only last one, maybe 2 seasons if they're lucky, and then they'll come back down to earth. But by then, some of the prospects and the extra draft picks that they picked up as part of the expansion draft should start becoming ready to play. And you may see a bit of a dip with the Vegas Golden Knights, but they'll be good pretty much. I'm just looking at all the extra draft picks they've got, and it's crazy how many draft picks they've got coming up. It's ridiculous. All the extra draft picks they picked up during the expansion draft. So that was topic number 1, the Seattle expansion. Looks like no decisions are going to be made this summer. It'll happen in the fall, whether or not they even get granted a team. And then if they get granted a team, they won't start playing until the 2020-21 season. Excuse me. They also talked about some salary cap projections. And it looks like the salary cap is going to fall between 78 and 82 million, which will be 3 to 7 million more than what it is this year. And the cap figure is going to be dependent on whether or not the players trigger the 5% inflator this year. And I'm not sure when they're going to decide whether or not to use that inflator, but they have used it in the past. I don't think they used it last year going into this season, which tells me they probably will use it this year. But it looks like, and if they do use that inflator, that means the salary cap will be 82 million, up from 75.
And that's for what season?
For this upcoming season.
Okay.
So that means if you got a team that's right at the cap now, 75 million, they will automatically have $7 million more dollars they can spend.
And that's a lot of money.
You can get a pretty good big name player for that. So
yeah.
They also talked about some arena updates concerning the Coyotes, the Senators, the Islanders, and the Flames, who are all trying to solidify arena situations. And looks like they said that they're, all those teams are continuing to work towards getting new arenas. Although he said Calgary, Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly said that Calgary's getting a new arena is not looking as good as it once did. Looks like they're headed for a dead end because the city just simply is refusing to pay for a new arena, and their owner certainly doesn't want to buy one. So it looks like we might see something going on out of Calgary there. I doubt they'll move the Flames if they don't get a new arena, but they're going to have to make the Saddle Dome work for the time being.
Right.
The Belmont Park Arena is still in development. That's the New York Islanders' new arena. They haven't started breaking ground yet on that, but they haven't decided not to do it. It's just they're continuing to work towards the planning process, I guess, is what they're still in the process of doing. They're also continuing to work on a new arena in Ottawa, and I guess there was nothing concrete announced, but they just said, but those 4 teams are all considering a new arenas. And I've also read, it wasn't mentioned in this particular press conference, but I've also read recently that Tom Dundon might be looking at when the contract is up at the PNC Arena to possibly go ahead and build a new arena for the Hurricanes.
Wow.
So that's just scuttlebutt. It's nothing's confirmed there, but I'm kind of hearing that here and there around town that he may not be entirely happy with the PNC Arena as an arena for the Canes. I don't know why. It's a nice arena, and I've been I've been all over that arena. I've even been down below where, the players. I haven't been in the Canes locker room, but I've been in the hallways down there. We have our referee seminar at that arena every year. So, and our meeting, our classroom space generally takes place either down in the room that's used as the the post-game press conferences. Mm-hmm. It's either down in that room, which is down at the ice level, or it's upstairs in one of the big banquet halls. But either way, when we go down to do our skating time, because there's classroom time and there's skating time with the referee seminar, obviously you're down at ice level. And I've basically been all over that level of the arena, all the way out to the Zamboni entrance, because that's how we get in and out of the building. Depends on year to year what's going on around, but there's been years where we've had to come in the same entrance where the players come in and out by the Zamboni entrance in the back of the building because they had us staying off the public levels. But anyway, either way, it's in nice shape. It's a good arena. It's in no way, I would think, a bad arena. It's just probably the terms of the lease is probably what has Dundon a little bit less than satisfied. Although everyone says it's a great lease setup for the Canes, he probably just wants something better. Maybe he's got enough money to build his own arena. I don't know. I think he's eyeing possible downtown.
Oh, okay.
A downtown arena. That seems to be the talk that goes along with getting a new arena, is not to build another arena out, because the PNC Arena is out. It's basically halfway to the airport from downtown. It's out of town. It's not. You need to drive to get there. It's not accessible by people who are living or staying downtown. And I think there's a movement around all professional sports to have downtown arenas, because you can take advantage of all the lodging and dining options that exist in these cities by having an arena right there centrally located within the downtown. So I don't know. Maybe we'll hear more of that, but as of right now, that's it's just scuttlebutt, and it's years and years away, because the Hurricanes have several years left. I don't know when their arena agreement runs out with the NC State, but it's years away. So anyway, and then the last thing is Commissioner Bettman was asked about legalized betting, and he said that the NHL is looking for consistency with respect to the Supreme Court ruling on May 14th, striking down a federal law that banned most states from authorized sports betting. And he said, we'd like to not have it vary state by state. Now, if all the states want to come together and do the same thing, that would be equivalent of federal legislation. And that's something we're focused on. So I guess he doesn't want to see betting unless all the states are doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. So, and he obviously he's got an interest in it because he wants to have the NHL to have basically get their cut of the profits.
Right.
So that's the angle that he's coming from. Basically saying, look, if we're going to have betting, we're going to want our cut.
Right.
Because it's our game that they're betting on. So,
right.
All right. So that is all the stuff I saw in the commissioner's message. I don't know if you saw anything additional to that.
Not with Gary Bettman, no sir.
Okay. I also saw kind of a funny story. The city of Las Vegas tweeted out, or Instagrammed or whatever. They sent out on social media and updated, the famous Las Vegas sign.
Yep.
The welcome to famous Las Vegas, Nevada. Well,
yep.
They tweeted out a photograph of the sign having been updated. Basically, what they did is they removed all capital letters from the sign.
And I saw that.
Because
different font.
Because the Capitals have been using all during the playoffs as their hashtag to follow the team. The hashtag is all caps, right?
Right.
Well, now Vegas is using no caps as as one of their hashtags. So they have gone on a citywide movement to remove all capital letters from all signs, official documents, and so on and so on. And they started with the fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada sign, where they changed the sign to remove all capital letters from the sign, and it now shows everything in lowercase caps. And Clark County, Nevada, which is the county that Las Vegas is in, took things a step further. In all of their press releases during the Stanley Cup Final, all their press releases will have no capital letters in them. Everything will be lowercase letters. So they tweeted out earlier this week to tell the grammar police to take a break for a couple of weeks because they're doing it deliberately. They're removing all capital letters from all of their official press releases. And then businesses all over town have been doing the same. There's a restaurant called Capriotti's. There's a sandwich shop in Vegas. Changed the name temporarily to Night Riotti's. But Night Riotti's also starts with a lowercase letter. So... So, yeah, Las Vegas is all about no caps right now.
Crafty people out there in Vegas.
They sure are. Oh, and I also forgot to mention, too, I don't know if you follow baseball much, but
a little.
There's a player who plays for the Washington Nationals, Bryce Harper. He's kind of torn in this, although he still maintains he is a Vegas Golden Knights fan, because he has been since day one when they first announced that they were going to have a team. He was one of the first athletes from a different sport than hockey to come out and say, how much of a fan he's going to be of the Vegas Golden Knights, because Bryce Harper is a Las Vegas native. He grew up there. He's from there. He lives there in the offseason. He's a Vegas native. So immediately he took to this Vegas Golden Knights team, even before the season even started. Now here he is. He's in that kind of a hard spot between he plays for the team in the city that his Vegas is playing. He plays for the Washington Nationals, and of course the Knights are playing the Washington Capitals. So although he says he's friends with a few of the Capitals players, and he's a fan of their team as well, he's sticking with Vegas because that's his hometown. That's his hometown team. Right. And he's maintaining he's still going to be a Vegas supporter going forward. So kind of puts him in a rough spot, though. The best, arguably the best player on the Washington Nationals, and he'll be cheering for the team outside the town that he works in.
Yep.
All right, next story, and I included this for the Carolina angle. On this one, 18-year-old Andrei Svechnikov, who is number 2 in the NHL's Central Scouting list, or projected to go number 2 overall. He's actually number 1 in the Central Scouting's list of the top North American skaters, as Rasmus Dahlin is number 1 for Europeans, but everyone is expecting Dahlin to go number 1 overall in the draft. He was named the Canadian Hockey League Top Prospect of the Year during the awards ceremony as part of the 2018 Memorial Cup in Regina, Saskatchewan on Saturday. So he's a right winger, 6'2", 188 pounds. He led all rookies in the Ontario Hockey League with 72 points, which was 40 goals and 32 assists in just 44 regular season games for Barrie in the Ontario Hockey League. So this is despite missing 17 games after injuring his hand. So he's considered by many to be the only other NHL-ready player in the NHL draft after defenseman Rasmus Dahlin of Frölunda in the Swedish Hockey League. And, of course, Carolina owns that number 2 pick in the draft, and be interesting to see if Carolina ultimately picks him.
I got to think they will, particularly because you just said that he is NHL ready to play the very first day.
Yep.
And I think Carolina is going to want to get somebody like that in their lineup immediately. So
he certainly has the size. At 6'2", 188, he's a little on the light side, but he'll fill out. I'm sure he'll come into camp approaching 200, maybe 190, 195 as he builds muscle in the offseason. But yeah, he's projected to be a power forward, which is something that Carolina needs. They need a winger who can score goals and who can play with a little bit of toughness and a little bit of grit. Something they've been missing in their game. So he certainly fits one of the holes that Carolina has. The only knock against him that makes me think that they may go somewhere else instead of him is the fact that Svechnikov is not a center, and I know Carolina needs a number 1 center, but they also need goal scorers. So I'm probably 80% sure that they'll end up picking Svechnikov at the number 2 pick, but we'll see. And whoever they pick, though, I'm planning on going to the development camp to at least catch at least one practice during the development camp this year, which should be happening probably late June, early July. Usually it's about a week or 2 after the draft when they have that development camp. So we'll see. Canadian Hockey League thinks he's the best prospect in that league. And that's out of 60 plus junior teams.
Yeah, wow, that is good.
Yep. So good. Well, that's all the stories I had coming out of the NHL this week. If you had anything else, we'll quickly do a power ranking, which right now is only 2 teams. And I think it's my turn this week.
It is your turn.
All right. Well, my gut says Vegas is going to win the cup, so that's who I put number 1. So, and I've not just because they won game 1, but I was thinking that I've been kind of, voting against them all season long and all during the playoffs, thinking there's no way that they're going to beat LA. There's no way they're going to beat Nashville. There's no way they're going to beat Winnipeg. Well, they beat all 3. And this time I just kind of gave in and said, okay, all right, enough. They're going to beat Washington.
You might very well be right. They win tonight. I think they're on their way.
Yep, I think so. All right. So that puts us into the Minor League Hockey Minute.
Yes.
And I know I'm going to continue talking about the AHL playoffs. I don't know what you had in mind.
My minor league hockey minute, Wayne, dealt with Britain's Big Ben comes to the KHL. And it deals with the first ever player from the British Elite League gaining entry into the KHL. So that's what my article was on. It's actually... I'm actually surprised by this. I thought the KHL would have had many players, especially since it's 10 years old, that they would have had many players come over from the different leagues around the world, elite leagues.
He's a Brit native?
He is from Great Britain. Yes, he is.
Okay.
And so he has decided, you want me to go first, or do you? Why don't I get mine out of the way?
Okay.
And that way, it's not that long of an article, but it did come off the KHL's website. And Wayne, if you think about it, the KHL, to me, from our coverage of it, is definitely more, I think, it seems to be more open to having players from different parts of the world come to play in it than, say, the NHL is, where you're getting primarily the 6 top hockey countries of the world. Sweden, Finland, the Czech Republic, Canada, the United States, and Russia dominate the players who come to play. Now, there are some exceptions. Matt Zuccarello is from Norway. There's players that play from Denmark. There's players that come, but for the most part, that's why I found this article. When I actually saw this on the KHL website, I was very surprised. Not that the NHL would let a person from the British Elite League enter that I'm aware of at any time. But that's what happened. And the article was entitled, Britain's Big Ben Comes to the KHL. The KHL is about to welcome its first ever British player from a land more widely associated with soccer and the mysteries of cricket. Ben O'Connor is heading to Kazakhstan to play for Baris Astana next season. So who is he and why now? Ben O'Connor comes from a hockey family. His father, Mike, was a rugged Canadian defenseman who spent several seasons with the Durham Wasps. Ben was born in Durham before moving on to the newly formed Sheffield Steelers in the early 1990s. His career brought him pretty much every domestic prize in the British game, as well as helping Team Great Britain to a rare season in the World Championship Elite Pool in 1994. Mike also played briefly on the same roster as Alexander Kozhevnikov, a Soviet Olympic champion who had a short spell with the Wasps in 1990. With that background, Ben could hardly escape a life in and around the game, and he duly followed his dad's footsteps by becoming a formidable defenseman in his own right. Unusually for a British player, he was willing to explore opportunities outside his native country and spent 3 full seasons playing in the Kazakh Championship for Saryarka Karaganda. At that time, there was the talk of KHL interest in a productive blue liner, but ultimately O'Connor returned to Sheffield. However, the Kazakhs kept track of the defenseman, and after he helped Great Britain beat Kazakhstan to promotion in this year's World Championships Division 1A in Budapest, a deal was struck to bring him to Astana. Now, O'Connor is hoping that he won't be the last Brit to head off for Europe's strongest leagues as the national team prepares for its first World Championship in 25 years in Slovakia next May. So next May, that's where they're going to play it, and Great Britain is playing there for the first time in 25 years, if I read that correctly. I was surprised by that.
Yep.
Quote, British players have seemed to get overlooked for some reason, and I think the success of the national team is making people take notice now, he told the Elite League's website. I would certainly love to see more guys ply their trade abroad, and it's only a matter of time when you consider we're in Pool A against some top teams next year, and the world will be watching. So as the World Championships come up next year, and as we talk about players from around the world and where they go, Ben O'Connor is one guy that made a decision to go to the KHL, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, the NHL certainly wouldn't disallow anybody from any country to play in their league. Bottom line with the NHL is if you're good enough, you're going to play no matter what country you're from. Great Britain has had, up until probably the last 10 years or so, has had a reputation as players from Great Britain are... Hockey's not as popular over there as it is in other European sports. So with that, they're just not at the talent level that some of the other countries, the Finlands and the Swedens and those countries are. They're right. Basically a step below or have been. But the hockey continues to get better in Britain and in that league. The British Elite League, I'm not sure the exact name of the league nowadays, but basically the top level pro league in Britain, the talent is getting better over there. and it's just a matter of time before we'll get the first. If it hasn't happened already, we'll get the first to come over to the NHL. So I also saw while I was on the KHL website, kind of following along with you there, that they gave Pavel Datsyuk a special award for becoming, or part of it is because he became the first player to win Olympic gold, World Championship gold, the Stanley Cup, and the Gagarin Cup. I didn't know he was the only player to pull that feat off.
The Gagarin, the Stanley Cup, the World Championship, and the Olympics.
And the Olympic golds, yep.
Yeah, that's probably true.
That's what they're claiming.
I know Patrice Bergeron, I believe he's the only one to win the Stanley Cup, the
World, and the Olympic. There's a few players that have done the triple gold club, what they call that. That's what they call the triple gold.
Right.
There's a list of players that have done that.
I think there was another one too that they were chronicling.
But to do the Stanley Cup, and the hard part is winning both the Stanley Cup and the Gagarin Cup.
Right. Yeah, that's extremely difficult.
Because most Russians who are good enough, or most players who are good enough to win the Stanley Cup, are going to spend the bulk of their careers in the NHL. Mm-hmm. And the only KHL they'll get is either at the very beginning, before they're NHL eligible, or at the very end of their careers, after they're basically no longer good enough to be in the NHL and they go back to the KHL for a season or two to finish out their playing careers. But Pavel Datsyuk probably left a couple of years early because he was still a very good player when he left here, because he wanted to go play back home in the KHL, and he ended up winning a championship in his first year there.
I know what it is. I know what it is, Wayne.
What?
There is a 4 gold or a 4 medal.
Okay.
It's the World Cup. The World Cup.
Oh, yep.
The World Championship. The gold.
In the Olympics.
And
the Stanley Cup.
Stanley Cup.
Yeah, there's been a few that have done that.
Bergeron has won all of those.
Yeah. He's one of the very few that have. But in this case, according to the KHL website and IIHF President Rene Fossel, he was on hand to give him this award. He is the first player to win Olympic gold, World Championship gold, Stanley Cup, and Gagarin Cup.
Yeah, that's quite a feat. If you think about it, I'm thinking about Mike Keaton, and again, when you say this, how difficult it is for a coach to win the Stanley Cup and the Gagarin Cup. Yep. That's extremely difficult.
Yep.
And I agree. Pavel Datsyuk think about it. That might never have her, and that might not happen again.
Yeah, you never know. So, and they also announced the key dates for next season. Opening day for the KHL regular season is September 1. They basically get started over a month before the NHL. And that's because they want the KHL season to be over before the World Championship starts, because they take the World Championship very seriously over there. And February 22nd is the end of the regular season. February 25th is the start of the playoffs. April 25th is the end of the playoffs, which coincides with the very beginning of the World Championship tournament, the IHF World Championship. So the KHL actually runs their season to make sure that all their players are eligible to play in the World Championship, which is why Russia tends to do pretty good in that World Championship every year. All right, on to the AHL. And since we last talked, they were in the middle of round 3, which is the conference finals in the American Hockey League. Toronto Marlies were playing the Lehigh Valley Phantoms, and they, in fact, did finish the sweep. That series went 4-0 Toronto. So going into the Calder Cup final, Toronto is now 11-2 in the American Hockey League playoffs, going into the Calder Cup final. Out west, you have the Texas Stars who were playing the Rockford Ice Hogs, and Texas ended up winning that series, but it went 6. So Texas wins that series 4-2. So now we're faced with Toronto Marlies playing the Texas Stars for the Calder Cup. That is Toronto Maple Leafs affiliate in Toronto Marlies, and the Dallas Stars affiliate in playing the Texas Stars. So that series actually has not begun yet. The first game, I believe, is... no, it's Saturday night. I was thinking it would be Friday night. Saturday night, June 2nd. First 2 games are in Toronto. They play a 2-3-2 format in the American League because travel budgets are an issue for minor league teams. So first 2 games are in Toronto. Next 3 are in Texas. And then the final 2 games are in Toronto. So you got June 2nd, June 3rd are the first 2 games. So they're going to play back-to-back. Then a day off, June 5th, June 7th, June 9th for the middle 3 games. And then June 12th and June 14th are games 6 and 7 if those games are in fact necessary. So the way Toronto's rolling, I fully expect they're going to come away with the Calder Cup.
They have been the team throughout the season that people have said, watch out, they should win the Calder Cup. And of course, didn't they make a run at it last year, Wayne?
Yeah, they went fairly deep.
Yeah.
Let me look. They lost in the second round, 7th game of the second round to Syracuse. And
Who won?
Syracuse, the Grand Rapids Griffins won the Calder Cup last year in 6 over Syracuse.
That's right. That's correct.
Yep. So yeah, Toronto's finds themselves in the Calder Cup final this year, and I fully expect them to win it. They're 11-2 going in. Texas is 11-3. Where's Texas' first round game? 11-4. So yeah,
going to be an exciting series, I think.
Should be a fun series either way. Hope the NHL network gives, because there's only essentially 6 more games in the NHL season at most. Hopefully the NHL network will take some time and show some love to the American League for those of us who don't have a team near us. Yeah.
The money to pay for the package.
The money to pay for their ridiculously priced package, yeah. All right, so enough about the American Leagues. Let's talk about our picks of the week.
Yes, sir.
And I will go ahead and start because I wanted to talk about ratings. TV ratings are out. Trying to get that to come up. I want to come up. Control. All right. Oh, using the wrong keyboard. I got 2 keyboards in front of me. There we go. All right. Ratings are out for Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Final. It was the most watched opener in 3 seasons and set local ratings records in the home markets of Vegas and Washington. Well, that was to be expected. Across North America on NBC, CBC, Sportsnet, and TVA Sports, the Golden Knights' 6-4 win against the Capitals averaged 8.395 million viewers, up 7% from last season's Game 1 between Pittsburgh and Nashville. In Canada, more than 8 million Canadians watched some or all of the game, up 4% from last year's Game 1. And 8.8 million people in Canada, even though it doesn't seem like that's a lot, that actually represents 1 in 4.5 people in Canada.
Yep.
So basically, a quarter of the people in Canada watched all or part of that game, which is, well,
a lot of people.
That's Canada.
If you did it in this country, you'd be talking about 60, 70 million people. More than that.
Yep.
Probably over 80 or 90 million people.
Well, there was roughly 8 million people in the U.S. that watched the game, but that only represents, it's less than 10% of the American. There's 300 million people in the U.S., so with only 8 million watching, you would think, well, those are kind of stinky ratings, but hockey, the fact remains, is the number 4 sport, arguably, in the U.S. They lag behind basketball, football, and baseball, but they were still up over last year. They had a total audience delivery of 5.279 million viewers on NBC, NBCSports.com, and the NBC Sports app. And that's the highest for a Game 1 since 2015, which was Chicago and Tampa Bay, and the 3rd best since NBC Sports began broadcasting the Stanley Cup Final. And the best still remains the Game 1 versus Boston and Chicago back in 2013. They had a total audience delivery of 6.315 million. Last season's total audience delivery, and this is a metric that NBC uses, 4.925 million, and Game 1 of 2016 between Pittsburgh and San Jose had a 4.132 million. And then the article basically ends by saying, overall, the 2018 Stanley Cup playoffs are the most watched in 21 years. This is the playoffs as a whole.
Wow, that really is something.
So I guess it pays to have new teams.
It does
in the league finals, NBA,
and a league in good standing. It pays.
Yep.
We report on it all the time. Hockey players do a lot to keep the league in good ratings because they do a lot in the communities. It's a fact. Just look at all the good things that are done by hockey players around the NHL. So I think that's a big part of it.
Yep. And you've got this contrasting with the NBA, who's also currently going through their finals, and they have the same 2 teams in their league final that they've had for the past. This is the 4th straight year those 2 teams have made it all the way to the final. I think if that were to happen in hockey, that would be a huge problem for the NHL to have the same 2 teams in it.
I agree.
I don't know if it's working for basketball. to have the same two teams in it every year, but it certainly would suck to be a fan of a team not in one of those two cities.
Right.
So, yeah, that was my story, just talking about ratings.
Very good. That I did not know that this is the best Stanley Cup in 21. That's really good. I had no idea. But Wayne, let me get to mine real quick here. I felt like I had to say something at some point regarding my status and future. I guess a little bit here on the Hockey Nuts. As you know, we've been together for the last 2 years on this podcast, and I felt like I needed to say something for the benefit of our listeners.
Yeah.
So I put together a little piece just kind of chronicling things and letting people know. And I wanted to just use that as my pick of the week this week so we get it all over with. So without any further ado, a little over 2 years ago, you approached me, Wayne, about starting a podcast on hockey that each of us could host. And my first question to you, and I remember it very clearly, was, what is a podcast?
Yep.
You remember that?
Yep.
I had no idea.
Yep.
That's really where I was 2 years ago. If I fast forward to 2 years later, it is truly amazing how far we've come. I think it is important for just a second to let our listeners know. First, we've had people download our podcast in all 50 states and in every province in Canada. That in and of itself is truly amazing. Each week, we have regular listeners to our show in places like New York City, Boston, Detroit, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Seattle, as well as in Montreal, Toronto, and Winnipeg. Globally, we have listeners who listen to our podcast, whether it's in Great Britain, Finland, or Sweden, where our show is listened to each week, or places like Ghana or Japan, where our show has been downloaded and where they don't play hockey competitively at all. Each week, you and I have done our best to keep our listeners informed on the happenings in the hockey world as we see it from the perspective of two hockey fanatics, not members of the press. This show does take time and money to produce each week. I'll say that again. It does. It takes money. It takes time to produce this show each week.
Yep.
But I don't think either one of us has focused too much on that.
Nope.
I think that this endeavor is truly a hobby and a passion for us because we get to talk about the sport we love so much. And that's important. Because of you, Wayne, and your design of the format of this show, I've gained a much deeper insight and expanded my appreciation of hockey tremendously. So I want to thank you for that. Covering the KHL each week through our first year meant so much to me. I've actually thought at times how great it would be to watch a game with you in Astana or Sharepovitz, not to mention St. Petersburg, learning about officials and referees such as yourself, and how competitive and seriously things are taken at the professional level all the way down to the grassroots makes me proud that I am a fan of such a great sport. And it doesn't matter where the sport is played, there is a camaraderie that exists among hockey fans such as us that helps to make this sport so exciting for us all, whether we gather in the arenas and gardens of the NHL or at the local rinks and ponds where this game is played so passionately each winter. As you know, Wayne, our next podcast will be my last as a regular co-host on this show. My job situation has changed such that I do not have the time to prepare for and record this show any longer. I'm not saying goodbye. I will make a guest appearance from time to time to provide my heavily biased insight, particularly as a New York Rangers fan. But I will greatly miss this show that we do each week and in discussing hockey with you in general each week. Best wishes to you and the continued success of the Hockey Nuts podcast. And I want to thank you very much. You didn't have to pick somebody like me. I can barely ice skate, but I certainly have enjoyed preparing each week for this, and I've taken it seriously, and it has been beyond my wildest imagination. I really never thought I would get into this thing like I have, but I've thoroughly enjoyed it each and every week. I want to thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Well, and I appreciate your participation too, and I've enjoyed our talks each week, and I look forward to seeing you come on from time to time, and of course I will run into you in real life from time to time as well, because we do live relatively close, and I do bump into you out in the real world from time to time. So
yeah,
I look forward to our talks there as well. So I appreciate your kind words, and and like you said, this is a hobby for us. We're big hockey fans, and as in a co-host, I've never really wanted to have a co-host that is just purely coming at it from a hockey player's perspective, because I can bring that perspective. I played the game pretty much all my life. I refereed it. I've coached it. I've seen it at every level from mini mites all the way up through college and into pros. I've experienced every level of it, so I can bring that perspective. What I was looking for, and what you brought to us was the fans' perspective. As someone who enjoys the game as a fan, and you brought that perspective, and you always came prepared every week. So that's something I truly appreciate, and I look forward to the day where you can come back and be on the podcast as a part-time guest, and hopefully one day come back on maybe as full-time again when your situation's, maybe when we're both old and retired, we can yammer on, and when neither one of us have jobs taking away from this. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows if that may happen, but
I hope so. I hope the opportunity presents itself where I can come back on and be a full-time host again. I hope that. I really do. And I look forward to that. That might happen. Yep. But it's not in the cards for me right now. So,
but yeah, with that in mind, we are continuing to look for hosts to fill in. I'll continue to do. Probably for the summer, I'm going to cut back the number of shows that we do, maybe to one a month. Won't be till after probably the week after free agency opens up, because there's a lot that goes on. Even when the Stanley Cup is awarded here in a couple of weeks, you've got right after that, you've got the awards ceremony. You've got right after that, you've got the draft. Right after that, you've got pretty much every team in the league doing their summertime prospect camps, which really nothing too earth-shattering comes out of those, but it's worth talking about anyway. And then, of course, July 1st, you've got free agency, which this year is looking like it's going to be really John Tavares is the only huge name coming out of free agency. Although there are a number of free agents available, there's no franchise players out there after Tavares. So usually within 5 to 7 days after that July 1 happens, most of the big names have already signed within a week after that, and things die down drastically after that until training camps open up in September. So from that point on, so for basically the second half of July all the way through probably till mid-September, I might do one show a month, but that would probably be it. And in the meantime, I'm going to be looking to build what I call build a bench of co-hosts, where some weeks you'll come on, other weeks I'll have another person, and we could have two co-hosts come on one week and one co-host come on the next. Either way, I'm okay with all of that. Right. But what we'll probably end up doing is we'll be solidifying our weekly podcast to, right now I'm leaning towards Wednesday 8 p.m. Wednesday 8 p.m. is going to be our night to podcast each and every week. And whoever happens to be available that wants to come on, I'll put it out there. I need to learn how to use Google Hangouts, because then you can throw an invite out to everybody, and then they can just pop in, right, rather than do it over Skype. I've never used Google Hangouts. I know a lot of podcasts use that rather than Skype. We've used Skype because it's just you and me to communicate, but Google Hangouts is another option, and we may move to that. I just need to learn how to use it. I'm sure it's not difficult. I just have never learned it. But that would allow people to just pop in and out. And that's kind of what I want it to be, is almost, you picture, going to a bar or a restaurant and just hanging out for the evening, and you have friends coming and going throughout the evening, and you're sitting down, you're talking hockey. That's kind of what I'm looking to do with the podcast, is have that kind of an atmosphere where I will be essentially the glue that holds everything together. But, people will come and go from week to week, or even hour to hour for that point. I still want to keep the podcast under 2 hours per episode. But the way I want to do it is just have different people associated with the show, instead of having the same people having to come each and every week. Because I know it's a lot of work to do. Yeah, it really is. And there's a lot of people out there who may want to dip their toe in podcasting, but don't want to commit to doing something each and every week. And this is the opportunity that you have, if you're a listener and you want to dip your toe in podcasting, to be able to do it without having to commit each and every week. You wouldn't even have to commit to doing a whole lot of show prep, because I pretty much do up the show notes before the show, distribute them out, in this case to you, but in the future I'll distribute them out, find a way to distribute to everybody who's involved. And then these are the topics we're going to be talking about, and you come on at Wednesday 8:00 and we just run down the docket. Yeah. So if you're thinking that you might want to do some podcasting but don't want the huge time commitment, don't want all the prep and all that, this would be a great way to do it, because you receive the show notes from me, you come on, you give your 2 cents, and we're done, and then we're off to next week. So that's kind of the vision that I've got for it going forward. So if you're interested, certainly get in touch with me. There's many ways to get in touch. You can find the ways to get in touch with me via the show notes of this podcast, or you can reach me through Twitter. I'm at WayneHalley9, and I'd be happy to discuss any further details with anybody who's interested. So, and I know there's a couple of people that have been interested, and I still haven't gotten in contact with them, but I will here probably within the next week or two. We'll get things nailed down as we head towards the. Probably want to have someone in place by the time we have the draft after the season is over. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at this point. So to at least have 1 or 2 co-hosts in place anyway. So all right. Well, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And that way we don't waste any time on the last podcast. We can talk hockey all the way through. Yep. And I'll have a great pick of the week if I can find one.
if there's one out there to be had, right? All right. So with that, let's go ahead and end the show for this week. And I don't have anything else other than that. So let's go ahead and end the show. And until next week, we'll talk to you later.
Take care, Wayne. Have a good week now.
Yeah, you too.
Okay.
Well, there you have it. If you like the show, please show us your support by subscribing to it using your favorite podcatcher program or app. The Hockey Nuts podcast can be found on major podcast search engines like Apple Podcasts and Google Play Music. Just search for the term The Hockey Nuts in whatever app you use to get podcasts. We can also be found at thehockeywriters.com on their podcast page. Thehockeywriters.com is a great place to get more stories and content about our favorite sport. We love listener involvement, and there are a few ways you can get involved with the show. You can email the show at feedback@thehockeyknuts.com, or you can leave us a voicemail in our mailbox at 919-960-1718. You can also tweet us. I'm at WayneHalley9. Steve is at SBall504man. Also, be sure to visit our website at thehockeyknuts.com. There you can see all of our past episodes archived, and you can listen to the show through your web browser on that site. As always, links and stories that we mention in the show are available in the show notes for this episode. In addition to our website, you can also watch us record the show each week live on YouTube. We generally record on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday nights, depending on our work schedules. You can find our YouTube channel at thehockeyknuts.com/YouTube. The show is a labor of love for us, but the production of it is not free. To help us offset the cost of producing the show, we've set up various affiliate links on our webpage at thehockeyknuts.com. Affiliate links allow you to help us financially support our podcast without costing you any more money out of pocket. Some of the affiliate relationships we have are with Amazon, HockeyMonkey.com, Ting.com, and SeatGeek.com. If you use any of these services, we'd greatly appreciate it if you used our affiliate link to those sites. Simply go to thehockeyknuts.com and click on the appropriate advertising banner on the right. Your purchase will not cost you anything extra, and a small portion of your purchase will come back to help support the show. Finally, we're also looking for future guests for the show. Obviously, we're not experts on every team and league in hockey, so if you consider yourself more knowledgeable than us on a particular team or league, we definitely want to hear from you. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Hockey Nuts Podcast, and have a great rest of your day.